Okay, it's Wednesday. We're not kidding about that. It's really Wednesday. I mean, the week has advanced, and so has clean energy. Clean energy has advanced. That's what we're calling this show, Clean Energy Advances here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy. With our special guest, Representative Chris Lee. He's the chair of the Energy Committee in the State House. And we have wait, I'll find it. Rachel Fukumoto, who is with Hawaii Energy. And Rob DeVeraterra is right there outside of the view of our lights, making sure that everything is kosher here, okay? So welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks so much for having me.
And Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. So let's start with one housekeeping point. If you guys want to send Twitter to us, we have a big monitor here with all the Twitter feed, and Chris retweeted at the beginning. He said, coming up at 4 p.m., Chris and Jay discuss House Bill 623 and the effect the state legislation has had on clean energy development in Hawaii. Wow, that's going to be good.
You guys wrote it. I just retweeted.
You did a good job. I mean, retweeting is kind of, you're agreeing anyway, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Okay, and Rachel, we want to talk about you for a bit.
Sure thing.
You have just recently joined Hawaii Energy. We want to know what kind of experience you're having, what you bring to the table, and what you're going to be doing there.
Sure thing. So, yeah, I just joined in early March, so it hasn't been too long, but I've been working on the residential rebate program. And so, for those of you who don't know, Hawaii Energy is the ratepayer-funded energy conservation and efficiency program for HECO, HELCO, and MECO customers. So a little bit about my background. I actually flew all the way to Nebraska for college and got my degree in environmental science. And
Why?
Why? Well, you know, environmental issues are really interesting, really important, as I'm sure Representative Chris Lee knows. But yeah, I just wanted to learn a little bit more about it. And so after that, I moved back home, got my master's at UH in natural resource management. And shortly after that, I was actually an intern for Hawaii Energy through the KUPU program. And
We've heard about that.
Yeah, and so really, really great program. But yeah, after 6 weeks, I joined on to the Hawaii Energy team.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
And congratulations to Rob DeVeraterra for having hired her. Good work, Rob. So what's your vision of energy, clean energy in Hawaii?
Well, hopefully, with Hawaii Energy, we're really working on conservation and efficiency. And so we like to give out rebates, especially if you're, you know, looking to beat the heat this summer. We're doing our window AC trade-ups. And so that's a $50 trade-up. As long as you call us, we'll haul away your old working window AC or portable air conditioner for free. And we'll write you a check for $50. And so it's stuff like that. We like to give out rebates for our residential customers so they can afford the energy efficient measures. So hopefully that helps Hawaii as a state to save some electricity.
So now a more difficult question for you. What's the relative importance of energy efficiency with Hawaii Energy and clean energy as you know, the kind of initiatives that Chris is working on?
Right. So there was that Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative of 2030, I believe. It was 40%, what is it, renewables?
It was, yeah, 40% and then 30% more efficiency.
Right, right. So that's where Hawaii Energy comes in. So we're working on the 30% energy efficiency in hopes that we can move towards, you know, cleaner energy resources and, yeah, hopefully,
you gotta have them both.
Right,
Is that what I get?
Yeah. Exactly.
You gotta have them both.
You do.
You wouldn't do one without the other.
Right.
Okay. So what are you working on right now in Hawaii Energy?
So actually today is the start of our new program year. So we are looking at some new program designs for our residential sector. We're looking into doing more online kits. If you guys have heard of that, last program year we were doing free kits, which included a CFL light bulb, an LED, a low flow shower head, and a low flow faucet aerator. And we also did a $10 advanced kit with 2 LEDs and an advanced power strip. So we're hoping to bring that back this year and maybe adding a little bit more to it too, but we'll have to see.
Sign me up. I need a couple of those things right now.
And you know where he lives, too. You know, I'm getting the feeling that, you know, there are more people involved from your generation than before, and you have more of a say than you did before, and you should be more interested than before because you inherit the whole shebang. So we want you to be happy. We want you to speak your voice. Yeah, good.
Right.
So we have somebody said, oh yeah, okay, Hawaii Energy sends us a tweet. Go, Rachel, talking about Hawaii Energy and streaming live on ThinkTech High. By the way, it's ThinkTech High, HI. Okay, let's talk about what's going on the ledge. This was, how would you characterize this session as an energy session, Chris?
You know, I actually think that we've done more this year in this state for advancing renewable energy than any state in the history of the country. I mean, this is literally a banner year, which I think marks really a paradigm shift, a turning point going into the future. We've got a number of huge bills that place us leaps and bounds ahead of energy policy throughout the rest of the country, which means we're basically writing it. And that's what's really exciting. When you talk about, you know, it's our generations to come that are going to benefit. We're the ones that get to decide that. And we get to decide how and when it's going to happen. So there's a number of bills we can dive into, but chiefly among them, which sort of provides the big, broad umbrella under which we're doing all this. We're going to be 100% renewable. That's our goal. We just talked about our clean energy initiative, shooting for 70% renewable by 2030. We're moving that to 100% by 2045. So we're adding on a few more years, but we're going all the way. And that's what's exciting because we'll be the first state in the country for sure. But what that means in the long term is that we've got a lot of work ahead of us. And we're going to have to get started right now.
You know, I'm going to be over 100 in 2045. But I'm going to make every bloody effort I can to stay alive that long and see what you did. I want to see it unfold. I want to see it come to life right on schedule.
Well, someone's going to have to be here to do the show to cover that. So we expect you'll still be working at that point.
So how do you see it unfolding? I mean, you know, when you say 100%, I mean, that's a great number. You can't do better than that. But that means there's no oil. That means that every car on the road is running on something other than oil. It means that all those big diesel power plants, they're not operating on diesel anymore. I mean, our world has to change to get there. What's it going to look like in 2045?
It does, you know, and I'm by no means a prophet or prognosticator, but I would say, and this is really with respect particularly to our electricity generation, which the law focuses on. I think we can make it, and we've got power plants that at that point will be, you know, well over 100 years old as well, running on oil and everything else that we can shut down. And we've seen the utility already. HECO on Oahu has shut down the one right downtown, and that's the start because we're replacing those with solar and wind and geothermal. And I think right now, today, we're supposed to be at 15% renewable in order to get to our current goals. We're actually at roughly 22%. So we're well in advance of where we're supposed to be. And we're going to see, I think, that progress continue. But I really think, in the broad sense, we're not talking about just replacing one power plant with another. We're talking about a revolution driven by the marketplace and technology. So for the first time, we're seeing people actually off the grid. Their houses, and I hear about more and more every day where folks are installing solar panels. They're installing battery storage and other technologies that just 10 years ago would not have even entered the discussion. And so to say, you know, when we get to 2045, almost certainly I think the one thing people can agree on is that that technology is only going to get cheaper the more it's produced, the more time passes and it advances. So we can expect more and more people to adopt that sort of thing. So I think we move from a series of big oil-fired generation plants to a whole distributed grid that may have some utility scale, solar and wind farms and things like that, but by and large, it'll also have a lot of rooftop PV. It'll have a lot of perhaps fuel cell storage or batteries, different technologies that allow individuals to generate their own power, save money, and contribute to the broader grid.
Wow, it's going to be different. I hope you're writing this down. let me interrupt Chris for a minute and ask you, Rachel, how do you see it in 2045?
Right. So, I mean, all of those things sound really great and hopefully incredibly feasible for the state of Hawaii. I think as a place with a mild climate and, you know, sunshine all year round, we really should be taking advantage of those resources. And, you know, for Hawaii Energy, unfortunately, we're not working on power generation right now. We're working on energy efficiency, but I think they work hand in hand to kind of help take the load off for, you know, solar PV, just to really allow, you know, the people of Hawaii, residents and commercial businesses to work at their most efficient levels and just keep everything, you know, working hand in hand with each other.
That's right. The cheapest energy you can buy is the energy you don't use. I mean, that is by far and away the easiest thing to do.
Right, right.
That's why it's the negawatt moment when these guys
Yeah.
come to our show. But you said revolution. So that, you know, implies a revolution beyond just the technology. Because when you change technology, you change everything. It's like if I come to you and say, would you rewrite the website for my company? You're really saying, would you rewrite my company?
Yeah.
Everything changes with a new website. And so the same, if I change the technology for energy, I am changing everything. Not only the people who produce it and distribute it, but the whole society. It's a little scary to think of it in those terms, but those are exactly the terms.
But
you have
that's
to think
exactly
about
what it is. I mean, across the country, you have a lot of energy grids that have been doing things the same way for, you know, 100 years now. You burn some oil or whatever it is, generate some power, and it gets sold to customers. And these new technologies are being called disruptive. Solar is being called disruptive because it's changing that entire business structure and the entire way the economy works. We've got brand new sectors of the economy growing out of nothing. I mean, think of all the thousands of jobs out there with all the solar PV installers that didn't exist just, you know, 5-10 years ago. So it is revolutionary in its most fundamental sense, which is exciting because it means with every revolution, this one included, you've got tremendous opportunity for charting a whole new future. And I think what that's going to mean for us here in Hawaii, in particular, is all kinds of great stuff. I mean, we have the most isolated grid on the planet. We have right now the highest prices on the planet because of that, because we import all our fuel. If we can get rid of that, that's billions of dollars annually that we're saving and putting into our local economy instead of shipping overseas. And that will allow any number of other industries to take root and blossom.
Yeah, more money in our pockets.
Yeah.
To use for other purposes.
Who's against that?
More money left for the government to do whatever the priorities are.
Sure. You know, fund better studios to reach out to constituents.
We're only beginning. Follow me, boys. But you know, it's a regulated area.
Right.
And government has always had a big imprint, you know, for 100 and some odd years in how utilities, electrical utilities especially, work, simply because it involves everybody and it involves, you know, sort of a security feature for the community.
Right.
So when you have this revolution, you have to identify maybe change in roles for the people, for the utility, for the regulators, for energy efficiency people. Their roles will change between now and whenever we reach the 100% goal. Maybe it'll be before 2045.
I think so.
I'm going to ask you about that. But query, how does the role of government change? Or how do you see the role of government unfolding as we go down the track on this?
You know, I think things definitely change, right? I mean, we are right now charting the course with our state goals to get off fossil fuels. But I think in time, that's going to move to the market, and it already is. It's a marketplace function that's driving the adoption of solar on people's roofs and things like that. It's not the government telling people you have to go do it. We give incentives to push people in that direction. But ultimately, even if we didn't have those, it still pencils out. You still save money in the long run. So I think that's where it's going to go. And that's what's so exciting, because who knows what that next technology is going to be. Maybe fuel cells, maybe different kinds of batteries, maybe something we haven't even thought up yet. But what we have to do as government, I think, is change our role from just one that oversees the energy sector to one that guarantees the flexibility in the energy sector to adapt, both for our utilities, for our regulatory agencies like the Public Utilities Commission and others, to make sure that whatever that technology is, and it's coming on faster than government can adapt to it right now, that we're ready for that. We acknowledge that's going to happen. We acknowledge we're not going to know what's coming next, and we'll be prepared to adapt to it.
And take risks.
Absolutely. We're going to have to. I mean, Kennedy didn't say we're going to almost get to the moon. We took the risk not knowing what that technology is going to be.
Right, yeah.
So,
Well, there's a short term and a long term, and where we have to go now in the short term is we have to take a break.
absolutely.
Sorry about that. So that's Representative Chris Lee. He's the chair of the Energy Committee in the State House. And it's Rachel Fukumoto. She is just recently got active as a regular employee of Hawaii Energy. Again, congratulations.
Thank you.
We'll be right back after this short break. I want to talk more about how this will unfold going forward and other bills that came up in the ledge. We'll be right back.
Aloha, my name is Josh Green. I'm a senator from the Big Island. I work in the ER there. But on Tuesday afternoons, I get to come and spend 45 minutes to an hour with Jay Fidell and the ThinkTech staff. They're terrific professionals. They help us to bring some of the leading cutting-edge topics here across our state to you. So you can join us at our show on healthcare in Hawaii to talk with leaders from across all the spectrum of health in our state, or you can join us for any other show where we talk about economic development or tourism or some really eclectic programs too. So really, we love to see you here on our show. Thanks for joining us and thanks for supporting us.
Hi, I'm your host on ThinkTech Asia, Bill Sharp. I look forward to you joining us each Monday between 4 and 5 o'clock when we film right here in our studio in downtown Honolulu. The show, ThinkTech Asia, focuses on contemporary events in Asia. And by Asia, we mean anything from Hawaii, south to Australia and New Zealand, west to Pakistan, and as far north as the Russian Far East. Clearly, this is one of the most economically dynamic centers of the world, and we bring you up to date on what's going on in a whole host of countries in this very vital region. We look forward to seeing you. Aloha.
Okay, we weren't kidding. We came back. We came back like Brill Cream. We came back. And we're here with Chris Lee, the chair of the Energy Committee in the State House, and we're talking about clean energy advances. But I want to stop for a minute and say we got a tweet worth mentioning. This is from Mark Ward at ThinkTech HI. Regarding energy efficiency initiatives, what can the mainland learn from Hawaii? What can Hawaii learn from the mainland? Okay, you want to address that now?
Sure. It's interesting. I was just in California meeting with their state senate and there are some of their utilities, and they're looking at following along with what we're doing. And we just passed our bill to be 100% renewable by 2045. They're working on one as we speak to be 50% renewable by 2030. So there's a lot that folks are doing, but what's really impressive, and I think the lesson that other states and counties can learn most, is how we adapt and how you deal with, for example, the proliferation of solar photovoltaic and distributed generation, which is changing utilities' business models. So a lot of folks are looking here. We don't have that answer yet. It's not figured out, but we're working on it to figure out how you can benefit the public while maintaining a working electric grid.
Yeah, talking before the show began about trying to find a kind of confidence in the public psyche here in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And this one area, and you were a lucky guy, really. It's one area in everything that the state is doing where we certainly can take advantage of technology. We can excel. We can provide sort of a statewide confidence. It's all no pressure, but it's all possible through the legislature and your committee. And so we could be, I think we're on the cusp of it in many ways. We could be world famous for our success in clean energy. We could create a path for everyone to follow. Wouldn't that be great?
I think that's the goal. I mean, we are the guinea pig with renewable energy. We have no choice, unlike other states. We can't rely on the next neighbor over to give us power. We've got to do it ourselves, and so that's what we're trying to do. And when you talk about being world famous and everything else, I think we're there. Folks are watching us. President Obama tweeted out our renewable energy bill when it passed, saying, you know what, look at Hawaii. And we're getting recognition from other countries as well. So I think if we can make it work here in an island state with an isolated grid, this kind of renewable revolution can happen anywhere, and it should.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark Ward, for your tweet. Keep them coming. What can I say? But one thing is that we're still in a mode where clean energy isn't available on a distributed basis for everybody. So if I live in a certain kind of condo, you've gone a certain degree to make it available for me, but I still don't have an assurance that I'll be able to do it, simply because of the structure of the condo. And you mentioned that some people, are going off the grid, but a lot of them, they're reluctant to do that just yet. Maybe the technology, maybe other considerations. Where is it going to go for the little guy? The guy that right now he cannot afford, with or without tax credits, to put solar on his roof. How is he going to get involved in the revolution?
So this is the question, right? I mean, I think everyone assumes that because you got to pay money to buy solar photovoltaic and batteries and things like that to provide your own power, that only the wealthiest people can afford it. And initially that was true when the price of a solar panel was like 8 times what it is today. And that was less than 10 years ago. But now you're seeing the greatest solar adoption in communities that aren't the Kahalas and are not the the Lanikais of the world. And folks are really starting to benefit. In fact, we just passed 2 big things to try and accelerate this, to level the playing field so that everybody can participate. One is a bill that we just passed this year. It's called Community Solar. It allows anybody, no matter where you live, whether it's a condo or a house or out in the boonies, to take advantage of renewable energy built somewhere else and get credit for it as though it's on your own roof. And that's something that's a game changer, particularly for all the folks who live in big, tall apartment buildings in town. So that project—
You can use it.
Yeah.
You can get a wire going from there to here and use it and be part of that community.
Essentially. I mean, basically, if Costco said, you know what, we're going to put a whole bunch of panels on our roof and we're going to let anyone buy into it, buy your own panel, you can buy into that and get credit for it as though it's on your own roof.
So this would be an exception to the general rule that you have to be a utility to sell power.
That's right. That's right. So this is one way to really democratize it so that no matter where you live, you can take advantage. The second big thing, and the state just did a press release, I think this morning or yesterday, saying, we're ready to go, is a program called the GEMS program. And it takes private Wall Street money, not even $1 of taxpayer dollars, and it basically allows really low interest loans to families and homeowners and even renters to be able to foot the upfront cost for installing your new technology, and it gets paid down on your electric bill. And it's going to save money even from day one for folks, and that's something that's really cool because it opens up that door just a little bit further to folks who previously couldn't afford it.
On GEMS, that GEMS, tell me how you feel about this, kind of competes with some of these installer companies, national installer companies that have come to Hawaii, and they've eaten a lot of other people's lunches because they're very successful. And one of the reasons they're successful is that they have financing products that will allow a lot of people to finance cheap. And it seems to me that what they're doing and how they have gained such a large share of the market and displaced in many ways local installers is because of those financing products. But those financing products versus GEMS, what's going to prevail? Can they coexist, or are they directly competitive?
Yeah, no, I think they can coexist. I mean, I think there's, as you can see out there, there's unending demand for more solar. I mean, everybody looks at their neighbors' electric bills and they see you're paying what? $17 a month. I'm paying $300. The question is how we accommodate everybody with decreasing ability to add more and more solar panels as quickly as we could in the past. The utility has really started to slow things down, saying, you know what, we need to get in line, essentially, and we'll approve you as we see that it's safe to go on the grid. And that's something that is completely irrelevant to the financing out there. That has really been the roadblocks. The question is, how do we get the utility to modernize their grid and get past all the hurdles that they're throwing up to be able to put more people on? And how do we, in the long term, make sure that everybody can participate and benefit when clearly if everybody has solar and a cloud comes over the whole island, let's say, the grid goes down. So how do we incorporate more technology, batteries, and redundancy so that we can have everybody generating their own power and have a truly distributed grid and everybody can benefit from it? That's the challenge.
Yeah. Gee, I mean, there's so many issues and questions
Yeah.
that flow out of that. So what about this other possibility of solar in farms, solar farms, where either A, the utility company, or B, somebody else in the nature of one of those community solar projects goes and makes the investment and then effectively sells the power to people who may not be able to afford to put it on their own roof. I mean, do you see this as a major element in the evolution of solar going forward? And how important is it?
I think there's a couple different schools of thought on that. I think it plays a role. I don't know, I can't say that it's going to be the be-all, end-all. I think ultimately the large-scale solar farms have a limited lifespan financially. Because I think in time, you'll have so much change over the next, let's say, 2 or 3 decades, with so many people putting in small systems, whether you're a business or a homeowner or everything else, that's really, I think, where ultimately things are going to go. And the utility will see its demand shrink, and it'll need to provide more base load more than anything. So I think in the long run, you'll see less and less of those. And you'll see more and more small-scale stuff. And a lot of that small-scale stuff, I think, will come through financing mechanisms like those we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. And the base load, it really relates to the grid. I mean, modernizing the grid and so forth. So the utility becomes a grid company and becomes a distribution company through the grid, sort of equalizing the more power over here and less power over there and equalizing the whole thing around. So, what strikes me is that that costs plenty of money.
That's right.
And I mean, although we are ahead in many ways, it's hard to say that we're ahead in actually modernizing this grid we have. How are we going to get there, at least in your view, to get the grid? So, I mean, because I think we agree that we need a grid. I mean, you can't get along everybody off the grid. That's not going to work, not in the 21st century. So how do you modernize the grid from a regulatory view, from a financing view, from a social policy point of view? How do you modernize the grid to the point where it can be exactly what we want it to be?
Well, now you've opened the can of worms.
Sorry I did that.
No,
That's our job.
This is great. These are the discussions that need to be had. I think the first thing is hit the low-hanging fruit. Do what we can today to modernize our grid. When we say that, invest in the technology that allows a lot of the other things to happen down the road. For example, smart meters. If, like Kauai and like many other places around the country, HECO here in Oahu was to invest in smart meters. And they've been saying they're doing it since 2008, and they've delayed and delayed. This message to you, HECO, get on it. But if they can do that and get those deployed, that means you can do all kinds of new things, like time of use rates, for example, where you can charge people more when there's a high demand for power and charge them less when there's not, so that if people really want to charge their electric vehicles overnight at home, they can do it more cheaply than they would by plugging them in under our current just flat rate power structure. It's a way to allow consumers to save in the long run, but we can't do that unless we can measure when people are using power.
Information technology, it's everything. We'll talk about transportation after our next break to get into that. But I wonder how they're going to finance it, because it's going to cost plenty of money.
That's right.
NextEra says that it has the money. I believe that. And NextEra says that it knows how to do this. Isn't that I mean, I'm very simplistic about this. Isn't that the obvious answer? You bring a big partner in, and he says he is going to, upgrade the grid, and he can and will do. I mean, isn't that the solution to the money problem?
I think it's part of it. It's a piece of it. I mean, you got to have a partner who's willing to make those investments, and we're talking about billions of dollars in investments,
Yep.
upgrading our lines, replacing aged lines, doing smart meters, investing in new battery storage and renewable projects that are going to decrease the cost of power and decrease our use of expensive fossil fuels. All of these things are going to happen. But more than that, you need a partner who can do it at lower rates. That's one of the things that NextEra has been advertising, that they're a much bigger animal than HECO is, and they've got more access to capital. At the same token, it's not the only option. I mean, let's assume from it that the deal doesn't go through. HECO itself will have to figure out how to finance these things. So for example, does the state or the county step in and provide, say, you know what, for the benefit of the public, we're going to help provide financial backing for some of these projects. The legislature this year passed a special purpose revenue bond, which is basically a loan guarantee to the utilities for $80 million for these exact sort of projects. In the past, 8 or 9 times, it's been done providing hundreds of millions of dollars in guarantees.
For the utility to buy
Right.
technology and the like.
Right. Essentially, it's like having a cosigner on a loan.
Yeah.
It'll help
Sure, the
decrease your
bonds,
rate.
yeah.
Right. And in other places, it's done differently, where you have public municipal utilities, for example, on the mainland. I was just at one in Sacramento. Because they're a municipal utility owned by the people, owned by the government, they don't pay taxes. So all their investment they make is 20 or 25% less cost than our utilities here in Hawaii. So that's one way to easily just wipe out a whole bunch of cost. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, but ultimately it is going to take that investment and a willing partner who is going to make that investment. And that's one of the questions that I think the Public Utilities Commission, in vetting this merger right now, has to ask.
Yeah, and the public, I mean, and everybody, we all have, you know, when this started, everybody was in favor of anything that smelled like clean energy. And then we started sorting out, well, we don't like this as much as that, we don't like that as much as this.
Right.
And then, you know, somewhere, I guess 2 or 3 years ago, the word clean changed to cheap. Everybody says, well, clean is nice, but it's too expensive, let's do cheap. But, you know, the recognition that I would offer you is that we all have to recognize that new equipment, new technology, even if it's really good, especially if it's really good, has to cost money. And somebody has to pay for it.
Yeah.
And we had to figure out a mechanism by which that can happen.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the bonds, maybe it's something else, maybe it's some kind of incentive. But people, seems to me, unless they change their minds, people are not willing to pay higher rates in order to buy clean energy equipment. They're not willing to do that. So you can't have it both ways, and we have to figure out a way to meet both ends of that dilemma.
Yeah, you know, I think, but it's changing fast. I mean, as technology, clean energy, renewable energy, I mean, it's a technology, right? You're not paying for fuel. You're using technology to translate sun and everything else into power. And as that technology advances, its cost goes down. That's just the rule of technology. Whereas with fossil fuels, for example, you're paying for a commodity, a shrinking commodity, which is getting harder to find, and that cost is going to go up. So that paradigm is changing, and what we're seeing now, for example, with the Rocky Mountain Institute out of Colorado, which is a big energy think tank, just a couple of years ago did a report saying, you know, in 10 years' time, in 10 years, it's going to be as cheap to install your own solar and batteries and leave the grid as it will be to stay on. And they just, in a couple of years' time, updated that report just earlier this past year, saying, no, we were wrong. It's not 10 years. It's 2016.
Oh my goodness.
For some places in Hawaii. And that's amazing. I mean, that's how fast technology is evolving and the prices are changing. So pretty soon, we'll have to deal with that in the broad sense, because if everybody starts leaving the grid, then the folks who haven't yet are going to foot the bill for a whole lot more. So we've got to figure that out so it's fair for everybody.
Yeah, and government has to be involved. And that means the legislature, I think.
I think so.
To figure it out. I mean, it's just not easy because we're cutting new clause.
Yeah, well, the legislature comes to Jay for help with that. So we appreciate you solving all our problems.
On that note, we're going to take a break. That's Representative Chris Lee. He's the chair of the Energy Committee in the House. Here we are in Hawaii, the state of clean energy. We do this every Wednesday and more. We're talking about clean energy advances. We'll be right back for more. We'll talk about transportation.
Oh, okay? Exciting.
Whoa, exciting.
Ehana Kako, a weekly program on the ThinkTech Hawaii broadcast network. Ehana Kako means let's work together. Think of the sad alternative, let's not work together. Here in Hawaii, with all of our diversity and the richness of the people, it's important for us to come together around issues on the basis of what's right and what's good and what's going to serve the common good. And that's what we try to do at Ehana Kako. Every week we interview movers and shakers, people in government, business, and other sectors of society to talk about how to create together a better government, economy, a better world here in Hawaii that can bless the rest of the world. I thank you for your attention to ThinkTech Hawaii, and we look forward to seeing you every Monday, 2 to 3 p.m. on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. We're Ehana Kako, and we wish you well. Aloha.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're having a great time this afternoon, Wednesday, with Representative Chris Lee, Chair of the Energy Committee of the House, talking about clean energy advances here on Hawaii, the state of clean energy. And now we're in our transportation mode, if you will, because, years ago, transportation was like, it was on the side somewhere. We had bigger fish to fry. But somewhere in the last couple of years, it's become obvious that we have to pay attention to transportation just as much or more than anything else. There's an awful lot of oil being burned right now on the highways, in the traffic jams. We got to fix it for economic survival, I think, ultimately.
Oh, absolutely. Transportation, what most people don't know is that it's roughly 2/3 of our energy use here in Hawaii. So it makes sense that we really start to dig into that. And there's one big next technology I think that's about to really blow up here in Hawaii. That was the wrong thing to say, because we're talking about hydrogen. That's really gonna expand. So it's funny I mentioned that because you talk about hydrogen like this, and most people think, wow, it's a Hindenburg on wheels. We're talking about hydrogen vehicles, but the truth is, they're actually safer than gas cars at this point. The technology has evolved so much. And so when you talk about hydrogen, we're really talking about taking wind and solar and converting this sort of energy, electrolyzing it, using it to make hydrogen that we put in our cars, and that's used to power our cars. And all you get out of that is clean air and water. And it's amazing because that makes it truly zero emissions. And this is something that Toyota, Hyundai, GM, all the big manufacturers have products in the pipeline. Toyota, in a couple months, is bringing in their Mirai.
Mirai,
think,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's going to be their new passenger car. That'll be a hydrogen fuel cell car. And that's going to debut here in Hawaii, which is really exciting.
$57,000.
Oh, yeah.
But
But it's a first generation. Just like the first generation electric cars, price is going to go down. And what's really exciting is the power for this, we can generate on island, meaning we don't have to ship in gasoline anymore. So we've got a new czar, a new guy who's brilliant. He's a general in the Army National Guard, the State National Guard, and he's our new head of putting hydrogen infrastructure in place so we can be ready for this. His name's Stan Osserman, and he's the head of the Hawaii Center for Advanced Transportation here in the state. And he's got a big task ahead of him because he's got months left to start the ball rolling, to really push us to invest in the infrastructure so that we have stations, refueling stations, ready to go when our vehicles start coming out.
Yeah, well, he was on the show last week.
Yes, that's right.
He talked about his task force, his working group, about how they identified all these areas of activity in the state that could all run on hydrogen. It's not just cars; it's all kinds of other stuff, and it becomes a kind of hydrogen energy economy. And my question to you is, what about the ordinary old-fashioned electric vehicles? Have we moved beyond that? Can these two exist at the same time, or should we be thinking about hydrogen now?
No, I think they can exist. And in all truth, a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle is an electric vehicle.
True.
The only thing different is that instead of a battery, you have a fuel cell, which is the same sort of power source that you had in all the Apollo missions going to the moon, powering those spacecraft. And so what's really exciting about this is that you can have the electric vehicles out there on the road. And we have a lot of them today. We've got EV stations, but you can have hydrogen too, just the same. I think they're both going to be offered, and they'll probably both be used in a symbiotic relationship, because a lot of small vehicles you can power with batteries pretty easily. Keeps the weight down, you don't need a whole lot of torque. But for the bigger vehicles in particular, buses, garbage trucks, fleet vehicles, it's not cost effective to put a whole bunch of batteries into those, and they don't last long when you've got to move something big and heavy. But this is where fuel cells can really thrive. I mean, we're talking right now about converting our fleet, starting with the airport, the Wiki shuttles, but really the shuttles that connect you from your airport baggage claim to the car rental site. So we're looking at a project that would put in some hydrogen vehicles there. And you start there, we can go into our public buses and everything else. And this is something that is a bit of a game changer. You know, the city of, I think it was Whistler in Canada, had done a couple of years of study with 20 buses that I think the public loved. And that's something that we can replicate. And there's no reason we can't do it. So we gotta get on Kirk Caldwell's hotline and tell him it's time.
Yeah, it's time. Well, you know, the thing about it is, they talk about confidence, talk about the way you change public opinion. That's both a sticking point and a great encouragement. If we can get people to cross the line and go into clean transportation, I think everybody will be more accepting of clean energy all around and everything else.
Yeah.
Because they'll see it works.
But you know what's exciting about it too? I mean, it's not just us pushing it on them. Like you said, it's them wanting it. And when a lot of the executives from companies that do, you know, the big tour buses, Roberts and so forth, actually went and saw one of these buses in action, the hydrogen buses, they're like, wow, how do we get a hold of this? Because no longer, when it's idling, do we hear the sounds and have the fumes coming out. We can keep our things running, and it's tourist friendly. Imagine if all the trolleys, the open air trolleys that are diesel buses right now, running through Waikiki in downtown Honolulu, were actually hydrogen vehicles producing zero emissions and zero sound. How wonderful would that be?
That would be wonderful. Well, I really have to say, I commend you on the notion of putting Stan Osserman or somebody like him in an office like the coordinator of hydrogen. Because, I mean, first of all, he's a great guy and a leader.
Yeah.
And he's always thinking, and he's able to get people to follow him. So in that job, you will see some real action. And he will report back to you and give you ideas that nobody has had. It'll be real leadership ideas. And maybe from him in that job as coordinator, we will learn how to do, other challenging things in energy. It's the same kind of thing. And maybe, you could look at that as a model
Absolutely.
to follow later on
Absolutely.
for other problems, back when it was the beginning of the Abercrombie administration, we were all much younger then. There was this notion of an authority, energy authority. I think that's probably, that's gone. It was gone very early in the game, but I think what we learned there is that it would have been layering government and too much government, and if you put all kinds of layers on, you slow it down. But with the notion of a coordinator and a careful selection of one, it has a better effect. It works.
You need somebody who can just execute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have a minute or two left, and I want to give that time, whatever it is, to you. And there's that camera 2. It's reserved for the exquisite philosophies, the profundities that our guests, especially
Something
guests
profound.
like
Okay.
Yeah. So tell them what you'd like them to take away from this discussion.
Well, first I've got to apologize because I thought radio show, and I immediately thought I don't have to shave and I don't have to dress up. So let that be
You're
the first
a man of
lesson.
the people, Chris.
I know. No, but really, I think the biggest lesson here is what we talked about just a little while ago. How do you engage people and make them a part of this process and make them feel like we're going to get there, because we are. And that's something that I think is easy when you think about where we're at and where we were. We went from nearly 0% renewable just a decade, 2 decades ago, to nearly 22% today. And that's because we had great leadership from a whole lot of folks involved across all the energy sectors. But more than that, it's because people stepped up and said, you know what, we want to do this. We're going to invest ourselves in our own home in PV. We're going to change the way we do things. We're going to call our representatives and our senators and say, hey, do something. And now we're on track toward 100% renewable energy by 2045. I think that's something that has to keep up. We need people to say we want to get there, and we want to invest our money where our mouth is. Because at the end of the day, every dollar we invest today in renewable energy will save us countless dollars down the road, because every year we have to import billions of dollars in imported oil. This is something that I think is the biggest takeaway, is that it takes a community, it takes a village.
Takes a village.
It's all of us. So make sure you stay engaged in the issue. Make sure you continue harping on your elected officials to do the right thing, to save money and get us where we want to go. That's the biggest message.
You know, we always talk about distraction on the show, and we try to remember the focal points that government and society should be focused on and not be distracted from. And clearly, this is the biggest one.
That's
This
right.
is the biggest, most important initiative affecting our state, and you're in the middle of it. I don't know how you sleep at night, but hey, that's, we'll have to talk about that later. One other thing before we go is you're going to be involved in the Clean Energy Day program,
That's right.
2015 on July 16th at Laniakea. And I wonder if I could ask you your role in that program and what you're going to be talking about.
Sure, Cafe Laniakea, right downtown. Come stop on by. We're going to be there with a whole lot of folks, literally the most important people in renewable energy who are charting our course forward. They're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff, but I'll be talking about what our state's role is and what we accomplished this year, because it wasn't just the 100% bill. We also made the first university system in the country that's going to be completely generating its own renewable power by 2035. We did all kinds of stuff, and this sort of stuff is, these sorts of policies are what's going to dictate our future. And clearly with NextEra and HECO and solar and all the things that are out there, we need to get a handle on it. And so we're going to be talking about that and sort of taking this conversation we're having today into the next step, which is, well, what's coming next year down the pipe for renewable energy at the state capitol?
We got to have you back to talk about that.
Oh, absolutely.
And not next year, but soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chris.
No,
Lee.
thanks a lot, Jay.
Great to have you here. Thanks so much for coming down.
I promise I'll dress up next time.
No problem. Representative Chris Lee, Chair of the Energy Committee of the State House, here talking about clean energy advances in Hawaii, here on Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy. Thanks so much. Aloha.